Good evening and welcome. My name is Uyai Anyekan, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Today on Spotlight Africa, Sudan Army Chief's envoy holds talks with CARE. Southern African troops to deploy against rebels in East DR Congo. Burundi's First Lady Ndayishimiye elected 10th President of African First Lady Nigeria. The stories are all just ahead on Spotlight Africa. Do stay with us. We begin today's Spotlight Africa with a report that the special envoy of Sudan's Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has met South Sudan's President Salva Kiir to discuss ways to end the war in Khartoum. President Kiir was chosen by the regional bloc IGAD to spearhead mediation efforts to end the fighting between Sudan's army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF. But the decision of the warring parties to attend ceasefire talks in Saudi Arabia has fueled speculation that the regional mediation effort has been ignored. At a press conference in South Sudan's capital, Juba, Dafala al-Hajj Ali tried to address the concern, saying he wanted to say high and loud that IGAD was not being sidelined. Meanwhile, ceasefire due to their deep mistrust. Representatives of the army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF are meeting in Saudi Arabia. In an interview with newsmen, the ex-minister said that officials loyal to former President Omar al-Bashir were trying to ensure the army's fight traitors. She described the war as senseless and said that fighters did not want to help civilians get out of the capital Khartoum as they were using them as human shields. Meanwhile, millions of residents are facing increasing hardships and dwindling supplies of essential goods. Phone and internet companies have also been shutting down their services due to lack of fuel. Such a pitiable situation, especially when we see the fact that the parties involved are unwilling to come to terms with any kind of negotiation on the table. Who then will they really listen to? This question is lingering 3 weeks now, and the fight is continuing in South Sudan. Well, away from that, Southern African countries have agreed to deploy forces to help quell violence in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where armed groups have terrorized civilians for decades. A special summit of the 16-bloc Southern African Development Community, which includes South Africa, Angola, and Tanzania, backed the reports say the decision was reached at talks attended by several heads of state, including DRC's Felix Tshisekedi, his South African counterpart Cyril Ramaphosa, Tanzania's Samia Suluhu Hassan, and minister from the regional group. Meanwhile, the meeting did not give the numbers of troops to be deployed nor a timeline for the deployment. Meanwhile, South Africa's government says it will launch an urgent appeal against a court ruling that hospitals, schools and police stations be exempt from power cuts, or that they be provided with alternative sources of energy like generators. The decision was taken to avoid undue risk to the national grid at a time when the government was trying to end load shedding. Minister of Public Enterprises Pravin Gordhan said in a statement on Twitter, South Africa has been hit with power cuts lasting, seriously disrupting the day-to-day lives of people and having a damaging effect on public services and businesses. According to reports, following legal action brought by trade unions and opposition parties, a high court ordered the government last week to take all reasonable steps within 60 days to ensure that hospitals, schools and police stations are not affected by power cuts. Meanwhile, analysts said the ruling would have huge financial cost for the government and it would find it difficult to implement. Still in South Africa, where a teenage boy died after he and his friend were reportedly playing with a gun that was accidentally discharged in Stanger, KwaZulu-Natal province. According to reports, the 14-year-old was declared dead on the scene by medics. Meanwhile, while the latest truce talks in Jeddah have yielded no progress with deadly chaos when fighting broke out on the 15th of April between the forces and his deputy turned rival Mohammed Hamdan Daglo. The battles have since killed hundreds, wounded thousands, and left millions barricaded. Food and basic supplies. Meanwhile, the feuding generals have sent representatives to Saudi Arabia for talks on establishing a humanitarian truce in an effort also backed by related developments. Hundreds of refugees fleeing ongoing violence and unrest in Sudan have reportedly crossed the border into Ethiopia. Reports say the situation came as gun battles and airstrikes fled in Khartoum state. According to reports, multiple truce deals have been declared and quickly violated since fighting erupted between army and paramilitary forces. Meanwhile, reports from the Sudanese capital Khartoum suggest that looting has become and guns tried to break into the hospital overnight as rival military factions continue to fight for control of the city. Reports say the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces (RSF) have been seen looting banks as well as the destruction caused by airstrikes and clashes between the rival forces. There are worrying signs of anarchy in Khartoum. Meanwhile, both sides have been taking part. In the meantime, little information continues to be released publicly on the progress of the Saudi-US mediated talks in Jeddah between the Sudan Armed Forces (SAF) and the Rapid Support Forces (RSF) that began on the 6th of May. But SAF leader General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan on Monday told newsmen that there is no use in sitting to stop bloodshed, that stressed that the RSF must give up its weapons. Numerous ceasefires have been violated since the conflict erupted on the 15th of April. Elsewhere, an official was killed in the northwestern Amhara region. Now, according to reports, the official was killed while on his way from Adama, a city in the Oromia region, to Awash town in Afar. It blamed unnamed terrorists for the killing. It will be recalled that on the 21st Lady of Burundi, Angelina Dashishimie, has been elected the 10th President of Africa First Ladies Peace Mission AFLPM in Abuja yesterday. This was disclosed in a communique read by Victoria Ogala, the Special Assistant to the outgoing President of AFLPM Aisha Buhari, wife of the President of Nigeria, Ogala Disol. She said that Shemia was elected alongside the First Lady of Niger Republic, Khadija Bazoum, as the AFLPM Vice President. In another developments, prominent Zimbabwean novelist Sisi Dagawa has won an appeal against an inciting violence conviction she received for staging a silent protest. The award-winning author and filmmaker was given a 7th reform. A high court in Harare today overturned the verdict, saying it was erroneously reached, with the judge adding the full reasoning behind the decision would be released at a later stage. This is awesome, great news. Almost a year of this particular situation, at least it can be laid to rest. Zimbabwe. Thanks for staying tuned. And now to the rest of the stories on Spotlight Africa. A day of national mourning is being held in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where more than 400 bodies have been recovered following floods and landslides in the east of the country. These were found in nearby Lake Kivu. Meanwhile, a government delegation from the capital, Kinshasa, has been sent to the area 4 days after the floods and landslides hit. The Congolese doctor and Nobel Peace Prize winner Denis Mukwege has criticized the fact that the victims were buried in mass graves. He has called for more dignified burials. Related developments, there's been a further landslide caused by heavy rainfall in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, DR Congo. 6 people are confirmed dead and more than 100 workers have also been found trapped in Kivu last week and known to have killed at least 400 people. Meanwhile, thousands more are reported missing. In an interview, a government spokesman, Patrick Muyaya, defended the handling of the crisis amid criticism of the authorities being too slow to respond and using mass graves to bury the dead. We move now to judicial matters, where a court in Senegal has handed a 6-month suspended sentence and a $300,000 fine to a leading opposition politician who intends to run in next year's presidential elections. Ousmane Sonko, who was found guilty of defaming the country's tourism minister, received a 2-month suspended sentence in March, but the prosecution called for a heavier sentence following an appeal. Now, according to reports, Sonko correspondents say the opposition sees the entire trial as an attempt to ensure Sonko cannot stand for president. Meanwhile, the incumbent, Macky Sall, may seek a 3rd term despite the Constitution's 2-term limit. Still on judicial matters, a high court in Malawi has ordered education authorities to admit learners with dreadlocks in public schools across the country. The court, sitting in the eastern city of Zomba, was ruling as have however been attending school after they obtained a court injunction. Meanwhile, talks between the Rastafarian community in Malawi and the country's Zion Ntaba ruled that barring children with dreadlocks from attending school was a breach of their right to education. Moving away from that, Botswana was hit by a nationwide electricity blackout shortly after midnight following a grid disturbance. Botswana Power Corporation (BPC) said it was investigating the cause of the grid in South Africa. Meanwhile, load shedding, meaning rotating power cut, has been introduced in the meantime. In a separate development, autopsies on at least 112 bodies of cult victims exhumed from shallow graves in Kenya's coastal Kilifi County have ruled out organ harvesting. Government pathologists said some of the victims died of starvation, strangulation, and suffocation. Kenyan police are expecting in order to go to heaven. Reports say Mackenzie is in police custody pending investigations. The Kenyan Red Cross said that 360 people had been reported missing, while the authorities say at least 60 others have been rescued alive. Meanwhile, President William Ruto has formed a commission of inquiry to investigate the deaths of the followers of the Christian cult. To Cameroon now, where a journalist, Anyi Ndenso, has been shot dead in the troubled northwest of Cameroon. It is the 3rd killing of a journalist in the country this year. Reports say Nso was in a bar in Bamida when unidentified gunmen opened fire. He worked for a weekly newspaper, The Advocate. Bamida is one of the areas worst affected by several years of conflict involving English-speaking sectionists, a church in the northwest of the country. Gunmen have attacked a church in northwest Nigeria, Kaduna State, kidnapping at least 25 members of the congregation. According to one official from the Christian Association of Nigeria, the gunmen burst into the Beji Baptist Church in Chikun, initially abducting 40 people, but 15 managed to escape. A police spokesman confirmed there had been an attack but gave no details. Over the last 2 years, there have been frequent mass kidnappings by criminal gangs that are no secrets. Lastly, today's Spotlight Africa, Zimbabwe has discovered oil and gas deposits during exploration in the northern Cabora Bassa region. According to Invictus Energy, an Australian firm, an analysis of 5 mud gas samples collected from the Upper Angwa Reservoir during the drilling of the Mukuyi 1 well between September and December showed light oil and very rich gas. Meanwhile, Invictus Energy managing little natural gas composition containing low amounts of carbon dioxide and helium gas. Great news right there for Zimbabwe. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website. Good evening.